Okay, so good morning, everybody. I think we can't really afford to wait anymore. So let me start this session, Track-A3 Digital Citizenship for All. So my name is Jian Teng. I'm a program officer with UNESCO, and we are co-organizing this event with our KEFA colleagues and CARIS colleagues. Just before we start, could I just remind everyone to keep your mobile phones on silent mode? And then there is simultaneous interpretation, so you can use the receiver, channel 1 for Korean, channel 2 for English. And there is also the Q&A function. If this is the first session of the conference that you're joining, there is a mobile question and answer function that you can use. Just use a QR code to scan it. You also have it in your program booklet, which you should have with you. And then you can follow the instructions. So select live Q&A, select the speaker, post your questions. Likes will help us prioritize questions if there are too many. That hasn't been the case, so don't worry about that. And then after the session, there will be a session survey. So they want to know how awesome and fantastic this session is going to be. So you have to put that it was really great. So you can also scan the QR code there. Select the survey. I think we can deal with that at the end of the session, so don't worry about that too much right now. So yes, it's almost 10:40, so let's get started. So in spite of that terrible photo that you see up there, I'm actually not so fierce and I'm quite friendly. So yeah, I'll be facilitating the session, but I'll also be wearing another hat. I will be presenting on UNESCO's work at the end of the session. I'll also be moderating this panel discussion that is coming right up. So don't expect any slides for the next hour. So we want to discuss and interact and have you think about the concept of digital citizenship and what it means for you, your country, your organization, your family, and any of your sort of social networks. So I think this is sort of a nice continuation from the keynote. The keynote, if any of you were there or many of you were there, it's very radical, right? Very radical change of a model of learning that seems to have been implemented quite well with tens of thousands of students who have gone through it and seems to have very good hiring outcomes. And so we would like to sort of continue that thought-provoking theme by having a panel discussion for the next hour to talk about digital citizenship. So I'm joined by a very esteemed group of 3 panelists. May I first start with Ms. Anita Low-Lim, a Senior Director for Touch Community Services. If you could take a seat there, thank you. And Professor Chung from Ewha Women's University. Thank you. And Professor Lelia Green from Edith Cowan University in Australia. So let me get started. You can give the mic to that side, and I will pass the mic to it. Yeah, so the format for this panel discussion is roughly 40 minutes or 35 minutes for the discussion. And we'll leave some time for your Q&A before the presentations. So while the questions are still fresh in your mind, please ask them. And actually, I see that the crowd is quite small, maybe like 30, 40 people. So maybe you can just raise your hand and ask the question, and we can listen through simultaneous translation, or if it's in English, we'll just respond directly. So what is the purpose of this session? The purpose of this session is to introduce and discuss digital citizenship. And the first part is to explore the concept of it as it applies, like I said, to you, your organization, your family, your school. And then the second part is we're going to present UNESCO and also SEAMEO INNOTECH's work that's been done in this space. Mainly to support governments and to provide a framework and resources for people to take action, to structure actions related to improving how children cope and thrive in the digital world. So that's a very short introduction. I think what's important to note is that we have different perspectives, I guess. Miss Anita Low-Lim is from Singapore. She works with Touch Cyber Wellness, an NGO in Singapore that's very experienced and has done a lot of great work over the past 20 odd years, 30 years. And then we have a perspective more, I would say, from Australian Europe perspective from Professor Lelia Green, who's again a very experienced professor, has done a lot of research practice and led a lot of projects related to investigations of digital citizenship. And she's passionate about how young people's digital use can help society address some of the big challenges of our age. So it's like things like climate change, related to the use of digital media, which is very complex. And then we have Professor Chung, who's the Deputy Director of the Institute for School Violence Prevention and the Department Chair of Education at Ewha Women's University. So he mainly studies the field of school violence, and nowadays his interest is how to use big data to detect and support students at an early age in the crisis of school violence, delinquency, and school dropout. Just an aside, it sounds like Dr. Chung might be out of a job if ECHO 42 and all the radical school models are used around the world, because they don't seem to have a lot of school violence or delinquency in that model of education. So if I may kick off the panel discussion, I think I would like to invite Jian. Take the liberty to say Jian because we work together on the Digital Kids Asia Pacific project in Korea. I would like to ask him, could you briefly explain how the project went in Korea, and also the most surprising finding that you found for Korean students, and why? That would be a nice introduction, I think, to the audience here.
Okay, thank you. Though Jian will explain later in this session, I would like to explain the outline of our project briefly. UNESCO DCAP, Digital Kids Asia Pacific project, aims to promote holistic competencies beyond the basic ICT or internet skills. And actually, my colleagues and I of Ewha will met several times with UNESCO Bangkok office, and then we found and finalized the framework for the digital citizenship competencies was developed with 5 domains: digital literacy, digital safety and resilience, digital participation and agency, digital emotional intelligence, and digital creativity and innovation. Actually, the framework was translated into over 100 items, and it was taken by over 5,000 students across the 4 countries that participated in the survey, including South Korea, Bangladesh, Fiji, and Vietnam. Actually, according to the descriptive analysis, UNESCO DCAP project's key findings are like this. Two things are very interesting. First, a common trend across all 4 countries is that the highest competency by domain is digital safety and resilience, which is composed with understanding child rights, personal data, privacy, and reputation, and digital resilience. On the other hand, the lowest is digital creativity and innovation, including creative literacy and expression. Second one is the children in South Korea and Vietnam spend extensive amounts of time on digital devices, as over 20% of respondents use device for more than 5 hours a day, and nearly 10% of all use devices for more than 7 hours a day. So it's so amazing time. And let's go one step deeper. The result of regulation analysis done by Ewha, ISVP, my colleagues and I, show the following interesting point. Comprehensive review of findings in 4 countries showed that the schools in urban had a positive impact on digital citizenship compared to schools in rural areas, and that female students had higher in digital literacy than male students. The duration of using digital devices has a positive relationship with digital literacy, digital safety and resilience, digital emotional intelligence, and digital creativity and innovation. And the frequency of use of digital devices has a positive impact on DCAP competencies, only but the negative impact on digital safety and resilience, as expected. So access to digital devices at home and at school has positive effect on overall competencies. Self-directed learners has a positive effect on digital literacy and digital creativity and innovation compared to learning from other people, for example, teachers, friends, family, community, and so on. And learning coding skills and developing the web or app experiences has a positive impact on all competencies. And the higher the level of education of parents, the more positive all DCAP competencies is related on the social economic status of family. So these results suggest that the government and schools providing students with access to digital media can play an important role in fostering their competencies. In particular, it means that providing students from low-income families with access to digital media is a way to reduce the digital divide. It also suggests that the most effective way to increase the competency of DCAP, or digital citizenship, which consists of 5 subdomains, is to provide an opportunity to learn coding skills and actually create a web or app. It can be suggested that it is important for many policymakers here, policymakers to create and implement intervene digital literacy learning programs that can enhance student competency using digital medias. Thank you.
Thanks, Jian. So I think, you provided a lot of information, a lot of findings. If I could just take start from the last finding that he talked about, which was, give children the opportunity to create, right, through coding. It ties in very closely with what the keynote talked about this morning, right? Put children in an environment where they are where they choose to learn and create and to meet challenges, right? That actually is very beneficial and makes them very employable. So I think this issue of creativity, when we conducted the research, it was actually the lowest in all the 4 countries that this research was conducted. So maybe if I may direct a follow-up question to Lelia about creativity and innovation. What sort of examples have you seen in your research or in your practice that has been really effective with children in terms of fostering their creativity and expression?
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that we took from the keynote this morning, one of the first things is that they were talking about adults. And I do think that we need to think a little bit further when we're talking about children. But I can absolutely recommend, I can promise you I've read every word of the Digital Kids in Asia Pacific report. I've had it printed out and bound because it is actually an excellent guide to the sorts of discussions we're having. And the work I worked on in Europe, the EU Kids project, is now out of date. Digital citizenship is so important now, and this is right at the cutting edge. But one of the things I found really exciting and interesting about this report, and I will get to the creativity in a moment, is that the creativity and innovation scores were low, but the lowest score of all came from one of the civic participation questions. I've got to take my glasses off to read it, but it was the particular one about getting involved. And I think that this is partly the cue. So it was civic engagement. The highest score was from Vietnam with 2.6 out of a possible 4. And the lowest was Korea with 2.37. I think that one of the issues is the issue of children feeling as though they have agency in the world. And I think that this is one of the areas where the East and the West, where Europe and Asia have much to learn from each other. I think Europe has much to learn from collective societies, but I think collective societies also have interesting things to learn about more individualistic societies. So I think that if you look at the issue of civic engagement and the capacity of individual children and young people, because we're talking about 15-year-olds here in this survey, to effect and make a change on the societies in which they live, I think this is part of the challenge that young people sometimes face. And when you ask me about the creativity that I have seen, I think the world's most famous 16-year-old, Greta Thunberg, it's interesting to me because we hadn't heard of her. She started her campaign in November last year. 2 years ago, she was a suicide risk. She has a number of challenges. She had selective mutism. She has a autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, and she had stopped eating. She explains her story on a TED talk, but we have watched her journey around the world and her sense of agency. She first found out about how to really network from contacting students who had run a campaign after the Marjorie Stonehouse shootings in Florida in February this year. And she asked them how they would organize online. And then she began to organize online. And now we have a situation where there is likely to be a global children's strike on the 20th of September. And I've been talking to teachers about how they are going to handle this, because of course it goes against the rules of school to allow students to strike. And some teachers are saying, we cannot give permission for children to strike, but what we can say is, if you are going to break the rules, what is your purpose? What do you mean to achieve by it? How are you going to communicate the things that you care about? Who are your target audiences? How are you going to address those things? So what the teachers are doing is finding an opportunity to work with the energy and the passion that the students are showing and to create learning moments through that. And I think that if we allow the system to respond to the areas that students are passionate about, even if it is something like online gaming, if we allow ourselves to validate students' enthusiasm and passion, then we can start making them feel more accepted and agentic, and then start creating teaching moments around those issues that will perhaps fuel creativity and a sense of agency within the concept of digital citizenship.
Yeah, I agree with what was mentioned earlier, because in Singapore, many of our children and youth are exposed to internet and the gadgets, the handphone, at a very, very young age. But recently, we tried some sort of experimentation to get them to be involved in our projects. But these topics were chosen because these are topics very relevant to the young people. For example, the mental health of youth. Youth mental health is a very major issue in Singapore. We see an increase in teenage suicide. Cyberbullying is another big topic in Singapore. We ask our young people, what are you going to do about this? If you are online, can you do something about it? And so there was some intentional effort to help our young people to go online and address these two topics. So many young people went online and shared about their own mental health struggles. And as a result, there was great response from their peers, from their friends, and we were able to direct some of this to the helplines. And similarly for cyberbullying, when they share experiences of how they were being cyberbullied, the young people know how to speak to the young people, and they can elicit a lot of responses from their friends, allowing the agencies like us to come in to help at the back end, not at the front. So I think the young people online have their role to play, but we have to help them to do it in a structured and a meaningful way so that they can contribute online.
Yeah, fantastic. I think what Lelia and Anita said, they're very powerful. Just to sum up, I think what I heard was, we're past the time where we're talking about digital skills and digital literacy. It's talking about how children can make use, or what purpose they are using these skills for, and that allows them to have agency. It allows them to decide and to feel empowered, right, to take action on behalf of purposes that they feel engaged with, such as mental health, as Lelia mentioned, Greta Thunberg with climate change issues. So I think, I'm not sure maybe what the typical perspective is in Korea, because we do have a significant portion of the audience in Korea, but maybe Jian, if you can share what children in Korea, or what you are seeing in terms of what do they use their digital skills and their abilities for, the purpose. What are the purposes?
Actually, I have a son, and my son like playing game with the smartphone. Actually, almost all Korean students like playing game and enjoying YouTube and so on. But we have some trouble. Every family has trouble with their kids, because parents parents want to have a good time with their children, but children don't want to play with the parents. So it's big problem in Korea now, and my family. So it's very actually we need to have a new way to have a good time with parents and kids. So parents want to play, go to the mountain, seaside, and so on. It's very interesting for the parents. But kids, if they go to the mountain together, parents want to go to the mountain, but kids want to stay at hotel. So it's a big problem. So we need to make the way to have a good time together in family. So actually, I have no answer now yet. So we need to find the way together.
Yeah, I think if I could invite Anita or Lelia to share, your experiences as well.
In my agency, we recently received a counseling case. The father is a gamer. The son is 10 years old. The father wants to bond with the son and tells the son to play the game at 12 midnight. Because when you play with the US players, it's a different time zone. And they play from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. And the son cannot get up to go to school. So when the case came to us, we asked ourselves, who needs the counseling more? Is it the father needs the counseling or the son needs the counseling? So we are seeing a certain trend where the gaming parents, the young parents, because they game all their life, now they are parents. Now, how are they going to bring up their children? That to us is a concern that we are trying to understand more. But it is true that the internet is a cause of family conflict. So in the program that we do, we have a program for gaming addiction. So how do we help young people to manage their gaming habits? Sometimes it's excessive gaming habits. So one of the rules we have is that in this program, if you want to enroll with us, your parents must agree to be part of the program. So the parents will be brought into the session, and we will connect with the parents at strategic points. One of the most important points I feel that contributed to the success of this program is when we help the parent to understand why their children game. The gaming psychology of a child or of a youth is something that the parents don't understand easily because we don't game. But for the son or for the child who is gaming, we help them to understand why their parents behave in a certain way. So through this personality testing, we sit the parent and the child down together and explain to them the profiling. And after that session, they have a better understanding of each other. And then they know why sometimes I'm so angry, why sometimes I'm not listening to your instruction, why you cannot talk to me in a certain way. So we mediate this family conflict because of gaming, but we do it, but we also use gaming to help them to resolve their family conflict. So gaming on its own can be a tool to bring families together if we know how to use it properly.
Yes, I've worked with families with older teenagers, so 17, and at the stage where they were about to leave home to go away to university. And what the parents of those families told me was that they had found gaming a real frustration when the child was 13, but by the time they get to 17, they've decided that they're no longer going to hassle the child, that the child is grown up now, that they have to accept. And actually, they have a lot of skills, and they've made a lot of friends, and they are very organized and self-motivated, and they've started to think about other people. So it is partly, I think, that kids are often very keen on gaming or very keen on Instagram at a time when they are typically in the middle of teenage years. And if you go back through generations, young people were always having conflict with their parents. It's just that this generation, it is also about technology. In my generation, it may have been how short our skirts were, or glam rock or the Beatles or whatever. In the middle of the 80s, it might have been all-night parties, the raves, and so forth. But the important thing is that it is part of the problem of being a teenager in a family, that you are in conflict with your parents, and technology is the easy place. But it is, if we're looking at trying to support children to become have greater agency, then one of the things that I think it's important to model to children, talking about the examples of parents, is the capacity to turn off mobile technologies. So the sense of always being on call. So we've had situations with very depressed teenagers, and some teenagers have always been susceptible to depression all the way through history. But what's new now is that there may be 3 friends who are up all night trying to cancel one depressed teenager on their phones. So these 3 friends go to school very tired the next morning, same as the depressed teenager is very tired the next morning. And nobody is in a position to help each other. They're all very tired. And so it makes a difference if the family has a pattern of leaving the phones to charge outside the bedrooms. But if you want to do that in a family, you really have to start as parents before the children are even in school, so that the children grow up seeing that as the everyday pattern. Or else you have to respond to a crisis and make a new family rule after a crisis. But it's things like that. It's being able to disengage from technology and do the things that we need as human beings, like get sleep, get rest, think of other things, not focus all the time on negative things, to have more freedom and capacity to be creative and to have fun and to enjoy life.
I think very interesting contributions from all 3 panelists. Maybe there's more to being human than technology, but it's very easy to blame technology. I think the message I'm hearing is that it's actually more about the people, right? It's about the relationships and the behaviors and patterns that people are taking, instead of sort of saying, oh, you know, everything's going to be fixed if you teach the children the right thing and they will learn it. It's not so simple. And as Jian mentioned, you know, there is no answer, right? There's no one answer, despite what we all want to hear. I think perhaps if I could move on to some issue that might be very interesting to the audience is the education system and teachers. And basically what we found in the DCAP research was that most children responded they didn't learn about technology through their teachers or parents. You know, most of them learned by themselves. Again, very much like what we heard in the keynote about learning on your own might be actually the most effective sort of learning that takes place. There doesn't need to be a teacher as the master of knowledge. So I wonder perhaps if I could invite one of the panelists to share what do you see as the role of the teacher in managing these big issues of purpose of using technology, giving children agency, disengagement, you know, what sort of role do you see teachers playing in your experience and in your context?
제가 그 영어로 생각을 안 해와서 한글로 얘기할 테니까 한번 들어주시기 바랍니다. 준비를 안 해서 뜻밖의 질문을 하셔가지고 제가 영어로 좀 생각을 해왔어야 이게 플루언트하게 할 텐데 그냥 한글로 말씀드리겠습니다. 오케이. 제일 중요한 발견 중에 하나가 스스로 학습하는 학생들이 디지털 리터러시나 아니면 시티즌십이 높다라는 연구 결과라고 할 수 있는데 저는 이 결과가 굉장히 중요한 점을 우리한테 시사한다라고 생각합니다. 여태까지 우리 학교 교육을 통해서 하는 이런 다양한 교과 과정, 학교에서 진행하고 있는 교육이 학생들한테 흥미를 불러일으키지 못한다. 예를 들어서 언어라든가 수학이라든가 과학이라든가 사회 이런 것들을 학교에서 배우지만 학생들은 이렇게 본인 스스로 원하지 않는 과목들을 배우는 것에 대해서 거부감을 다 일반적으로 가지고 있다라고 저는 생각을 하고, 물론 이제 소수의 공부 잘하는 학생들을 제외하고는 상당수의 과반수의 학생들은 강제로 가르쳐주는 것에 대해서 그렇게 좋아하지 않고 실제로 그 효과가 많지 않다라는 걸 시사하고 있습니다. 실제로 한국에서 이 코딩 교육이나 이런 컴퓨터 교육에 대해서 학교에서도 진행을 하고 있지만 사실 학교에서 교실 상황에서 이루어지는 이 컴퓨터 교육이 실제로 아이들한테 흥미를 주지 못하고 있습니다. 왜냐하면 학생들은 다 각각의 흥미, 관심이 다른데도 불구하고 학교에서는 일방적으로 정해져 있는 내용과 속도로 가르치기 때문에 학생들은 그 과정에서 새로운 것을 배운다라고 느끼지 못하는 경우가 매우 많다라는 것입니다. 그래서 중요한 점은 이 결과에서 내가 스스로 흥미로운 것을 스스로 찾을 때 나는 많이 역량이 개발된다라는 걸 결과가 보여주는 점은 만약에 여기 우리 정책 그 담당자들도 많이 오셨는데 강제로 정해져 있는 커리큘럼을 만들어서 똑같이 가르치는 방식이 이 디지털 리터러시에서는 유효하지 않을 수도 있다라는 시사점을 주는 것이고 좀 더 셀프 디렉티드 러닝 아이들 스스로 흥미로운 것을 찾고 나아갈 수 있도록 모티베이트 해주는 동기를 자극해주는 것 그다음에 아까 우리 저도 키노트를 들었는데 에콜 42에서 주는 시사점도 판을 만들어주고 그 판에서 스스로 원하는 것에 몰입할 수 있도록 인게이지먼트 할 수 있도록 해주는 그런 세팅을 만들어주는 게 가장 중요한 부분이다. 교사의 역할도 지식을 전달해 주는 것이 아니라 학생들의 학습 동기를 자극하고 학생들이 스스로 할 수 있도록 퍼실리테이트를 해주고 그렇게 하는 어떤 약간 멘토의 역할로의 전환이 디지털 시티즌십 분야에서는 더욱더 중요하다. 저는 사실은 기존의 교육도 이렇게 바뀌어야 된다는 생각을 가지고 있고 한국 교육을 그렇게 바꾸려고 노력을 하고 있는데 특히 새롭게 떠오른 이 분야에서부터라도 이렇게 다양하고 그 다양한 흥미를 갖고 있고 다양한 수준을 갖고 있는 아이들에게 일방적으로 공급해주는 이런 교육 방식은 유효하지 않다라는 점이 저는 굉장히 중요한 시사점이다라고 생각을 합니다. 제가 한글로 좀 더 많은 말씀을 드리려고 한글로 말씀을 드렸습니다.
Thank you. I thought that was a wonderfully clear message, and I agree with every word. I think it is interesting, though, that maybe if we actually had a chance to analyze Ecole 42, we would see that the reason why they need money to set it up, why they need philanthropists, why it needs a structure, is actually to support the self-paced, self-directed learning. It may seem as though it happens by itself, but it doesn't, which is why they need the structure. And that structure is something that does require educational underpinnings and care, and particularly when we're talking about very young people from 5 to 18. So I do think that the self-paced learning is important, and I think that it is true that a lot of teachers have felt inadequate. They have almost tried to stop their students studying technology because they didn't feel as though they knew as much as the students did, and they didn't want that ignorance to be shown up. I think it will be a huge freedom for teachers if we can say, you don't have to know, and to parents, you don't have to know what your children are doing, you just have to relate to them as people and support them. And if you learn from what your children are doing in your class or in your family, then you should explain how grateful you are and how interested you are. Because I think that is the sort of experience that allows a child to feel their agency and to feel as though they're making a difference in the world, which is part of what digital citizenship is about. When we start recognizing children for the contributions they are making in their local community or society, or even within the family home, then that will allow them to feel more powerful, which will allow them to move into the digital citizenship, which we appreciate is the way of the future.
In Singapore, we do have a structured cyber wellness curriculum that is incorporated in the ministry's educational curriculum. But this didn't happen from 20 years ago when you saw the slide which Zhonghui shared. The master plan for our Singapore MOE was rather skills-based. But Touch Cyber Wellness has been advocating for value-based cyber wellness education for the last 18 years. So in 2014 or 2015, our MOE decided that, okay, it is such an important topic, we will incorporate it into the MOE's core curriculum. Now the students will have to go through cyber wellness lessons in class, delivered by the teacher. When that happened, we were roped in to support this development by the MOE. We provided consultation to the framework and the content of the slides. What is the thing to teach? How best to deliver it? But these things are to be delivered by the teacher in class, and MOE will train the teachers to deliver the slides. And so we were no longer asked to step into the school to provide education lessons for the students. The teacher will do it in class. After some time, so essentially the outline of the lessons were not meant to address everything that you need to know about cyberbullying, about online risk, about relationship, about scamming, but it was meant as a general outline to help the students to understand what a particular cyber wellness topic entails. After a few months of implementation, we found ourselves being called back to schools by different school partners. And this time, we are not asked to do the education component, but we were asked to do the leadership training for the students. That means after learning about the basic cyber wellness education, the students are asking themselves, now I know about this, but what do I do with the knowledge that I know? So our role started to evolve, and we became project leaders together with the students to help them to create cyber wellness projects that will benefit the school and benefit the community. And the teachers, because of their workload, they cannot mentor the children through the projects. And so we played that role on behalf of the school. And as a result of this new role that we play, we were able to support the schools in raising up cyber wellness ambassadors who created cyber wellness festivals, carnivals, posters, blog sharing online in the school environment, and they created a new culture for the school. So I think the school and the NGOs on the ground, we play very different roles when it comes to cyber wellness education. And the latest development we tried, the project that we had was to bring the youth to teach the elderly how to use the phone. For example, the elderly, they need to know how to use WhatsApp. They need to know how to voice record, how to send a picture to my grandson, how to send, how to tell my family to come home for dinner. They can't type because they can't read and they can't write, but how do you voice record? So these are projects that we engage the youths in the community so that they can have real-life application to what they are learning in class.
That's well, that's really, really fascinating. You know, we came from you know, let's not use a standardized curriculum from Jian, and then Lelia was talking about the purpose and also how recognizing the children's contribution. You know, treating them as people, as agents, right, instead of talking down to them. And then Anita sharing how sort of this translates at the ground level with the schools, and how Touch Community Services plays a role in that. Very, very related and very practical perhaps for the educators, policymakers, and even the students here. We are running out of time, so I would like to sort of offer a closing question to all the panelists to respond to, which is basically pick the most important issue that you see for digital citizenship in the future, and why you feel it's most important, sort of to highlight a concern that's close to your heart for the audience to learn more about. And if you could take maybe about 2 minutes for each response, that would be really good. If Jae-young, you could start. Yeah.
In Korean? Okay, yeah. 제일 중요한 이슈는 디지털 미디어가 굉장히 빠른 속도로 변화하고 있고 내용도 굉장히 많은데 그거를 정부가 따라잡기에는 상당히 큰 어려움이 있습니다. 왜냐하면 정부는 교육과정을 만들고 교사를 트레이닝해서 적용하려고 해보면 이미 타임렉이 생겨서 세상은 더 빨리 변하고 있어서 특히 이 분야에 있어서는 정부가 무조건 모든 걸 다 해야 된다는 생각보다는 좀 더 빠르고 플렉서블한 조직, NGO나 다른 기관들과 협력해서 빠르게 적응해서 지원해 줄 수 있는 것을 정부는 뒤에서 밀어주는 이런 접근이 가장 중요하지 않나. 정책적으로는 이게 제일 중요한 포인트라고 생각하고요. 조금 더 낮은 수준에서의 좀 약간의 정부의 역할을 좀 생각해 본다면 중요한 건 두 가지입니다. 아까도 제가 얘기했던 학생들의 게임 중독, 그다음에 인터넷 중독, 그래서 과도한 사용에 대한 절제, 스스로 절제할 수 있도록 해주는 이런 교육. 그다음에 두 번째는 지금 한국에는 아까 싱가포르 사례에서도 말씀해 주셨는데 한국에서 굉장히 중요한 사이버 불링. 그래서 디지털 시티즌십의 제일 중요한 부분 중에 하나인 서로 존중하고 공감하고 소통할 수 있는 역량. 그래서 다른 사람을 괴롭히거나 폭력을 가하지 않도록 하는 이런 것도 역시 지속적으로 함께 해나가야 될 부분이다라고 생각이 됩니다.
Thank you. So just following on from cyberbullying, I did a chapter last year on the tragic story of a young Canadian called Amanda Todd, who took her life as a result or following on from cyberbullying. And what was interesting to me, apart from the tragic story there, was the fact that the internet has so many millions of views from teenagers. So I think that one of the things that becomes clear, there's also a program called Teenagers Respond to Amanda Todd, which has something like 32 million when I did the chapter that I wrote. Young people asked to talk about how can you respond to cyberbullying, given that as a project, are also able to talk about the importance of bystanders, the importance of supporting people within the classroom. They are able to see themselves as heroes in the story of a cyberbully by standing up and befriending the victim. And I think that if we take the Ecole 42 lesson and give young people a project of how do you respond to challenges like cyberbullying, or how do you respond to challenges like climate change or the climate emergency, then I think that those are really important. Young people are very extreme sometimes in the way they look at things. So one of the perceptions that is driving the climate strike run by young people is this idea that 2030 is the deadline. If they have not managed to persuade people to change the way we use the environment by 2030, then they are just watching their planet die, and they will die with it. This is a terrible vision for young people, but at the moment it is spurring them to great agency. And I think that it is important to actually listen to what young people have to say without necessarily disagreeing with them. We might have lots of science about why they're wrong, but it is important that they know that we appreciate that what they believe and what they tell us is what they think is true, and that we will take that on board and accept that in the way we respond to them for the time being anyway.
In Singapore, we are becoming or getting ourselves ready to be a digitally ready nation. There is a nationwide effort to make all of us digitally ready, including very young children to the elderly. And so this is a part of the life that we cannot disconnect from. We are encouraged to use technology to make our payment. We are encouraged not to carry our currency. Everything functions on the phone. But that poses a real problem for the elderly. And the second thinking I have is that the internet and the excessive use of the internet and technology is a real cause of divide for the family. Family, they do break up because of addiction, because of excessive usage, because of pornography. And so we are thinking of a new concept which involves digital citizenship, but maybe we should start to develop digital family citizenship. That means the child does not exist on his own. The child exists with a family. Does the family have enough resources to cope with internet as a stress point in the family? If the family does not know how to manage a gaming addiction or a excessive screen time usage addiction, the family will suffer major stress because it will affect relationship. So is it time that we teach families in this digital age to function and equip them with the knowledge, the skills, and the values that they need so that they can become real online citizens as a family and not as individuals that we deal with in different settings. Currently, I go to the school, I speak with the children. I go to the universities, I speak with the young adults. I go to the community, I speak with the elderly. But when we took a step back and then we asked ourselves, hey, all of them are affected by the internet now. And so I feel that helping the family to cope as a whole unit is something critical that we need to start working on, at least for the Singapore case.
Okay, thank you for the contributions from the panelists. If you could give them a round of applause. So now perhaps I could allocate 10 minutes for any questions that have come out from the panel discussion. Okay.
Thank you very much for the panelists for your great insight on this issue, which is where it spread now in the society where smart device is everywhere, cheaper, internet connection is cheap, and especially for the developing country like Cambodia, where you can have $2 for internet a month. So everyone is connected, but how with this issue is very important. I can see that there's an initiative regionally out there, but we would like to have some cooperation, mean that sharing best practices, for example, mass media or Facebook page of a certain ministry, for example, education ministry, can be play also a role to disseminate. If we can have a clip or awareness issue that can be educate general public, that can be educate. Parent is also important. In Singapore, parent is almost with children, and parent itself, they don't, they are not aware of these issues. How can they have children? That is so. A general public awareness is kind of important thing for a developing country, and especially in local language. Because so send a message out there for everyone, so there's more or less the message can be heard somewhere. This is what I would suggest to the panelists, whether there is some regional cooperation on this issue, that all kind of clip, awareness clip in terms of video, because video is more, more speed than other means. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think one thing that we learned is that maybe certain messages at one level can apply to many different cultures and countries, but actually, these sort of issues, they're very local as well, they're very contextualized. I think, no doubt, that's one of the key messages that I heard from the three panelists, things differ, but there are also some key learnings and some core messages, I think, that can also apply. Any other, Lelia? Sure, go ahead.
One of the things that we've seen in our analysis of the way that agencies operate in these areas is that agencies tend to build a website and to talk about their services and hope that people will come to them. But it doesn't work like that. Agencies have to be brave to get their message out. So they have to see where the big discussions are, which are often controversial, which are often inflammatory, and they post as part of those big discussions, putting in little bits of policy and things and directing people to their sites so that they are engaged in the nitty-gritty of the things that are happening at the village or the community level that are creating a lot of controversy, so that people can then know that the agency has a position and is caring about those issues and can then go to the website. So it is, a lot of money goes into the agency websites, but there's often not much traffic. The agency has to be brave and go out and get their feet dirty on the social media sites in order to let people know that they care and that they are doing something.
Thank you, Lelia. Any other questions? Yes, Ugyen.
Follow up to what Lelia talked about, agency having, being able to, being brave and then coming out to, actually spread the message. Would you mind sharing, like, what's your experience of having, have you actually worked with the journalism, these days, media is a powerful, actually, medium to actually get across the message. So what are your experiences of working with the media?
I think okay.
In Singapore about 2 years ago, we wanted to raise the awareness for the issue of cyberbullying. And together with an agency in USA, nobullying.org, we launched the campaign Power of Zero, which is also supported by UNESCO, which addresses the issue of cyberbullying specifically. So we were Touch was the Singapore agency that rolled out this campaign first in the world. What we did was, it is a community message, right? So we took the message to our train. How many of you have taken Singapore train? It is like any transit train, right? So we took the messaging, we got the train company, and they gave us the space for free. We got a corporate partner who sponsored the production, and we created a cyberbullying awareness campaign inside the MRT train, and it went on for 3 months. So there were like 80 million eyeballs in the 3 months. And through the campaign, in the community, through the media, the newspaper came, they covered the event, the social media covered the event. We were invited on radio talk shows to talk about cyberbullying, and among the young people, what do we do with that? And it generated quite a bit of attention for the issue of cyberbullying. But if you stop your campaign at that level, then it is just a campaign. What we did was, after the campaign, we continued the advocacy work in the schools. So we went into schools and asked the schools if they wanted to raise ambassadors that will stand up against cyberbullying. And we had different phases to this 1 year campaign that we did in Singapore in 2018. So yes, it is true. If you know how to engage the media, your message actually can take very prime coverage in the local news. And that will help in your advocacy movement. It will help in promoting the message that you want to bring out to the community.
My Korean is better than English, so I will talk in English. Korean. 한국에서의 특히 학교 폭력과 관련해서 본다면 과거에 루머라고 해서 다른 사람을 비방하고 안 좋은 소문을 내던 행태가 최근에 SNS를 통해서 페이크 뉴스 형태로 개인 간의 이런 사이버 불링 형태가 나타나고 있고, 또 아이들 간에 같이 쓰고 있는 어떤 그 SNS에서는 그 SNS에 아이들이 모여서 서로 욕하고 험담하고 이런 것들이 이제 있고요. 실제로 어른들 사이에서도 최근에 오늘도 지금 여러 가지 뉴스가 나오고 있는 페이크 뉴스의 문제가 지금 뭐 우리나라뿐만 아니라 한국뿐만 아니라 미국, 영국 뭐 더 어느 나라나 지금 다 겪고 있는 문제라고 생각이 됩니다. 그래서 지금 말씀하신 대로 미디어 자체의 어떤 자정 기능이 굉장히 중요하고, 그래서 실제로 한국에서는 교육부가 어떤 큰 회사, SNS 회사에 강제로 사람을 초대하는 것을 좀 금지해달라는 뭐 이런 요청을 통해서 협력을 하고 있고, 그런 걸 이제 한국에서는 이렇게 단체로 이 채팅하는 그 방에 모아놓고 강제로 불러서 욕을 하고, 그래서 못 나가면 또 부르고 하는 이런 문제들이 이제 발생하고, 그래서 실제로 이거는 미디어의 어떤 회사랑 정부랑 아니면 학교랑 다 같이 협력해서 해결해야 될 이런 이슈들이 새롭게 지금 등장하고 있다라는 생각이 듭니다. 그리고 가짜 뉴스에 대해서는 삭제할 수 있는 기능, 본인이 자기 정보의 주인이 될 수 있는 그런 권리가 요즘 한국에서는 강조되고 있습니다. 그래서 다른 사람이 나의 정보를 가짜로 올렸을 때 내가 주인인 경우에 내가 그 정보를 삭제할 수 있는 권리, 이게 지금 한국에서는 굉장히 중요한 이슈로 부각되고 있습니다. 그래서 자기 정보를 보호할 권리도 있고 내 정보를 안 밝히는 권리도 있지만, 다른 사람이 올린 내 정보에 대해서 내가 관리할 수 있는 권리까지도 지금 한국에서 많이 논의되고 있는 상황입니다.
Thank you. And it is really interesting, I think, to see the operations of the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe and the 8.2 billion euros that Google has been fined over the last 3 years. Now, that's for anti-competitive practice rather than for privacy violations. We saw the big YouTube fine yesterday of 170 million for taking children's data. But it is now, we're moving into the era where these big platforms are being called to account. And I think it's important that we continue that pressure. But in terms of getting media attention, one of the ways that makes a difference but also engages children as agents is to have a competition for children in schools to make videos of a certain length on a subject like cyberbullying, like climate change, like the power of Google, and to post them, and then to have other schools like, so that, or indeed people around the world like these videos. So it almost runs itself as a competition, because the more likes they get, the more you can see that it's making a difference. But it also offers children the opportunity to be producers of media, and then that in itself engages the conventional media, I think. So I think that it is, as well as having the professional campaigns, which have a lot to recommend them, that may be in support of or as well as instead of those campaigns, to ask children what they think is important and to make a video about that and upload it.
Thank you to the panelists once again. I think we have to end the panel discussion section right now. But I think personally it was a very fascinating discussion, much more than I expected, because the collective power of 3 is more than 1 + 1 + 1, right? So could everyone give a round of applause to the panelists? Thank you. And we'll now move on to the next presentation by Ms. Aury and Santos, who is a senior researcher at SEAMEO INNOTECH, which is the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, Innovation and Technology Institute. So she will present for the next 20 minutes, and then I will round up with a short presentation, and hopefully we'll have some time for another set of questions. So yeah, take a break, rest your mind. A lot of information was discussed.
Hi, good morning. That was too loud. I'm Aury, Santos, and I'm here to share with you what we at SEAMEO INNOTECH has been doing to help address digital citizenship and cyber wellness among learners in our Southeast Asia. So SEAMEO INNOTECH is a regional center on educational innovation and technology. We are just one of several other regional centers in Southeast Asia, each one with its own mandate to help education throughout the region. We work with ministries of education. That is why many of our programs and projects are distributed and implemented through the MOEs. At INNOTECH, we focus on developing and implementing learning programs for educators. We conduct training programs for the teachers up to the decision makers in the MOEs. We also conduct academic research, and we offer the findings to the MOEs for policy makers. And then we also develop knowledge products that are based on research in response to current and emerging education concerns. We have a 5-year development plan that will conclude in 2021. And one of the projects we identified is digital citizenship. Data suggests that over the years, young people have an increased use of the internet and social networking sites. And incidentally, there's also a rise in internet access in the school, in the homes, and in other places. And because of this increased access, comes increased possibilities for people to be, young people in particular, to be exposed to the risks and threats that are available online. So, is the internet the problem? As the Global Kids Online Study points out, the internet itself is not a main cause of anything. In other words, the internet is not the reason for any harm that is associated with the use of it. Rather, its associated risks depends on who and what people do while they navigate and interact online. So I stand before you not as a content expert on digital citizenship. I only manage the project that we did for SEAMEO INNOTECH on digital citizenship. But what I'm doing here now is my little contribution to help spread the word of how we can possibly address the growing concern on how young people interface with the digital technologies and the online world. But first, let's define some words in very simple definitions. What do you think is cyber wellness? Cyber wellness refers to the physical and mental well-being of internet users as manifested online. It also involves an understanding of the online behavior and awareness of how to protect oneself online. What is digital citizenship? One definition refers to being confident and positively engaging with digital technologies. And when you're confident with it, then you are able to maximize the opportunities it presents and take control of the threats. Now, what is eCitizenship? The E in eCitizenship to us means several things. One is electronic. So just as email is internet mail and ebooks is digital publication, eCitizenship is being a citizen in the digital world, and citizenship, as we all know, comes with responsibilities. And this is something that young people need to realize. Often young people, when they go online, they think their online personas are separate from the real world. And so they tend to behave very differently. E also stands for education, which we believe is vital in raising awareness and instilling the proper values among young people on the responsible, safe, and ethical use of digital technologies, as well as on the cyberspace. We cannot deny the many advantages of ICT, but we also cannot turn blind eyes and deaf ears on the alarming effects that incorrect and improper use of ICT brings. Lastly, the E in eCitizenship refers to emotional intelligence. And this is about being able to manage and regulate online behavior in safe and responsible ways. Well, we can say that our students or the young people as digital natives are more of an expert in using the technologies, even more so than their parents and their teachers. However, they still need guidance on how they can properly interact with technologies. It is important they are armed with the proper attitude and behaviors to protect themselves from the risks and harms that they are exposed to every day when they use their devices and go online. Sorry. Okay, sorry. So simply put, eCitizenship is about being a responsible, mindful, and ethical citizen of the cyberspace. At this point, allow me to show to you a video that is also incorporated in one of our resources, and it tackles the issue of internet addiction.
去网吧玩游戏，玩着玩着，然后呢，家长知道了，然后就开始和家长吵，然后呢就开始吵，然后就这种这里边啊，有的很多孩子上网是我们正常人不可想象的，有的孩子在上网上的非常极端的时候啊，他这个上厕所连解小便什么的影响他上网打游戏，他带上尿不湿，所以我们所以说称为他电子海洛因。上个月我妈说刚来北京，我以为是找心理医生，饿了，你来就饿了，然后进来了感觉不对，结果被教官一拉。
啊，我不知道你马上就同意了，我在家先玩了1个月电脑，不是去了3个月，然后1个月过后就收到这儿了。
他们说我有网瘾，我不信，真的我不信。
哦，那么他们病态的心理实践，就是说这些孩子来打机制，孩子一辈子内心世界就是孤独，你了解他吗？他孤独。那么他想让谁陪伴他呢？哦，到网络世界去了。上知天文，在网上玩；上知天文，下知地理，中国不人。那他罪恶的之心，在每天的培育。
痛苦，我不是不能玩电脑痛苦，而是寂寞的痛苦。我无聊，我苦苦哀求你，我真的活不下去了。我儿子自从上网以后就变了一个人，变得冷酷无情，什么办法都有用。这个强制性把他吃的那个安眠药把他送到这了，我们是浙江。
Okay. Apparently, internet addiction was declared in 2008 as a clinical disorder, and so there were many boot camps in China to treat the web junkies, as they call it. So imagine wearing diapers just so they won't be disturbed with playing their online games. But internet addiction is just one of the many risks online. Another one that's causing an alarm is cyberbullying, as has been mentioned. And this has affected not just famous people online, but even ordinary people. For many young people, they feel that being on the cyberspace offers them a sort of anonymity. This perception has its advantages and disadvantages. It's an advantage for students who are shy, who are introverts, but they are able to communicate more and be more interactive because it's done online. A disadvantage to this is when they encounter bullies who will react to their online posts, for instance, and say bad or hurtful things. It is difficult enough to teach our children how to handle bullies that they meet in the real world, but it seems that bullying online is more difficult to handle and can create far more damaging effects, as any issues spread quickly when shared online. In the Philippines and some other parts of the world, there is another danger, and that's the online exploitation of children. In 2017, it was said that there were around 45,000 cases reported on online sexual exploitation of children. But the figures had jumped to 600,000 cases by 2018. So imagine the figures, 45,000 to 600,000. And the guy I spoke with, he was part of the government agency dealing with this situation. They said that the report came from US, and it only, the 600,000 is just pointing to pictures, graphical pictures that are sent online. It does not even include yet videos, live streaming of videos. So imagine the figure, 600,000 could be even more. And what then can we do to help mitigate this situation, which are affecting the young people, our young people? Oh, sorry, I missed that. Okay, so this is our response. SEAMEO INNOTECH has decided to develop this book along with a set of resources, learning packets to address the situation. The intention for this is to help teachers impart knowledge, raise awareness of online risks and opportunities as well, to also help boost critical thinking skills of learners and strengthen their socio-emotional intelligence. The eCitizenship ebook addresses the concepts of digital safety, citizenship, and values, which are relevant to all forms of ICT use and to all people that use them, particularly the youth. The ebook also seeks to harness the powerful and potential roles of teachers in guiding young people use technologies safely and considerately. However, this potential to influence the learners depends largely on how much they understand the digital world and how young people interface with it. But how could they even begin to do that when they themselves are not familiar or not proficient users of ICT? And the gap has to be closed in order for them to effectively serve as role models to their students. So how do we harness this potential powerful influence of teachers? Right now, we only have a couple of ebooks that aim to promote the development of 21st century skills among teachers, but that's a technical aspect. The eCitizenship ebook introduces the concept of cyber wellness and digital citizenship. The ebook is comprehensive in the sense that it tried to cover as much areas as it can to provide teachers with easy to read and understand information about digital trends in Southeast Asia. It also packaged teaching and learning resources about the technical solutions to minimize online threats and maximize opportunities. There's also a range of strategies and tips on how they can help their learners to be safe and responsible online users. We also included suggested classroom activities and discussion topics to help their students develop social-emotional intelligence and teach them to be responsible digital citizens. We also provided resources that will hopefully connect the teachers to organizations, existing policies, and programs in Southeast Asia that respond to similar concerns on digital citizenship. The book also presents existing frameworks on digital citizenship to which the eCitizenship resources can be aligned. When we were doing this, the DCAP framework that will be shared by Mr. Jian was still being developed. But the learning packets, the mini lessons that we have developed, actually aligns also with the framework that they are promoting. The ebook is divided into two major parts. So part one gives an overview of digital citizenship, and part two focuses on developing intelligent digital citizens. Sample topics include being intelligent, about time spent in cyberspace, and a section that talks about when is too much use of the internet too much, and what can be done to moderate ICT use. That's the structure of the book. So background information, There are graphics also, the tips and advice, activity box, suggested classroom activities per chapter. Per chapter, you'll also find list of helpful web resources, a summary of the chapter, and occasionally there'll be links to learning packets and other resources that we have. So I've been talking about learning packets. This is another resource under the eCitizenship project. And we have an introductory set of 10 learning packets that are activity-based. We came up with this after trying out a set of materials that are also intended to be used by teachers. And these are focused more on developing technical skills. The teachers, when we went around to different countries, asked for actual classroom lessons that they can use. And this is our response to it. So currently, as I mentioned, we only have 10 learning packets, actual lessons the teachers can make use and integrate in any relevant school subject. So they can integrate it in science, English, math, values education, social studies, and other subjects. We have being mobile. It talks about the advantages of mobile technology, cyberbullying, we all know that, internet addiction. Teenpreneurship discusses the potential of online business for the youth, exposure to inappropriate content, herd mentality online. It's how young people can easily be influenced by the mob or what is popular, they just follow without really processing or thinking the implications of such behavior. And cyber stalking, this is about following somebody online with obsession. And then plagiarism and misinformation, plagiarism is about pretending that your work, one's work is actually your own, and misinformation, we know about this, it's spreading online, fake and incorrect information. Trolling is just like cyberbullying, but the intention of trolls is to inflict harm and trigger anger from the person that's being trolled. And cyber grooming and online exploitation, this is the how some people online will try to befriend, for instance, a young kid, pretend that they're kid also, but their intention is to gain the trust of that person, young person, and then eventually exploit. So the learning packets are designed making use of the 5 A's by Vicencio. It includes activity, analysis, abstraction, application, and assessment. So we start off the learning lesson with an activity which will make the learning more learner-centered and engaging. We strongly believe that through experiential learning, students will internalize digital citizenship concepts better and develop values related to ICT use and exhibit safe, healthy online behaviors. So each learning packet has 2 major components, the teacher's guide and the presentation slides. Some learning packets also come with additional materials like posters, cards, pictures, links to video clips, and other resources. So the teacher does not need to find for printables, manipulatives that they can use for implementing the lesson. It's all there. They just need to print out the materials. So what's the teacher's guide? The teacher's guide is solely for the purpose of the teacher. It's for her, his or her use to help in preparing for the learning session. It details the learning plan, including the activity to be conducted with the help of the PowerPoint slides, and it contains subsequent steps to be done in line with the 5 A's learning sequence. The teacher's guide provides information about the intended age range of the learning session, the time duration, the materials needed, and ways to adapt the lesson to other age groups and other types of learners. So this is an example of a teacher's guide on internet addiction. Strangely enough, the panelists were mentioning this. So the teacher's guide, the topic is indicated there, the title of the activity, and then the age range for which the activity is designed for. In this case, internet addiction topic is designed for 5 to 18 years old. There's the rationale, the prerequisite knowledge and skills required of the students, and an overview of the lesson is indicated, the expected learning outcomes, integration points, subjects by which you can integrate the lesson, the resources that the teacher will be needing to implement the lesson. And then at the top, it's hard to see, but this is a matrix that we designed just so for the appreciation of the teachers, how the topic is aligned with the different existing frameworks on digital citizenship. And then, so the teachers does not come blind when he or she teaches this lesson on internet addiction. We gave short background information on the topic. And this is the actual, sorry, wrap up. Okay. 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 So the slides, these are the actual slides that the teacher will use in teaching the lesson. So it's highly graphical so that students will be interested in it. And the resources are available online. It's for free. It's registered under Creative Commons. So you just, by attribution, share alike, and there's another, so for educational purposes only. And it's an ebook, and it's available in ebook format and PDF. So you can download the app for the e-reader application from the App Store, Google, and Windows Store. If you don't want to use the EPUB version, you can always access the PDF, which is available from this site, the Mobile Technology for Teachers website, where the eCitizenship project is a part of. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Aury, for the really great presentation. Very informative. I think very practical resources that teachers, schools, and governments, educators would be happy to use. I realized that we are actually out of time. It's 12:10. So I understand some of you may have lunch plans to go to, so please feel free to go. I will take about, hopefully less than 10 minutes to cover the research that we have conducted, a UNESCO Asia Pacific Regional Bureau for Education. Just to give you a brief idea about what we saw at the regional level and how we worked with the governments to tackle this issue, this growing issue and important issue of digital citizenship. So let me just go ahead and, oh, there we go. I think what I'll do is I will present the introduction and overall findings, and then sort of highlight the recommendations. So I will skip that middle section, findings in the 5 domains. It's a bit too detailed, I think, maybe for this presentation. And as Lelia mentioned, she highly recommends the report. So there you go, our advocate for UNESCO's work. Yeah, so you can find it online. It's super easy, you know, just key in DCAP or UNESCO DCAP and you will be able to access it. So as an introduction, why are we doing this research in Asia Pacific? So Lelia mentioned in the panel discussion that there was a previous EU-wide project called EU Kids Online, a fantastic work that we took inspiration from, but there was nothing like that in the Asia Pacific region. So there was lack of region-specific research, and even that research that we could find was coming very much from a north, global north perspective, from researchers in America, researchers in, I think, the UK as well. But there wasn't, sort of not really anchored in data gathered from the children in this region, or based around a framework that considered Asia Pacific region's context, which is, we are the most diverse region in the world compared to the others. So the other thing was limited definitions. Generally, it was also talking about digital citizenship was less about citizenship, more about skills, more about how to use a computer, less so about the broader issues that we discussed during the panel discussion. So we are trying to expand on that. We're trying to bring a different perspective. And lastly, I think, safety is important, but there was an over-dominance of risk that we had found from previous publications. So, not everything is about risk. Blaming technology is easy, but actually there's so many opportunities. Again, the panelists pointed that out. There's gaming. Gaming, as the keynote pointed out, is not necessarily a bad thing. There's also how youth engage and organize to address issues like the climate emergency, how they work with their parents, or how they work with their community to deal with issues that are important to them, like in Singapore, as Anita highlighted. So there's more discussion than just the safety issue. So we came up with this framework that we didn't want to prescribe this is what you have to think about, but this just provides 5 domains that should be considered in this concept of citizenship. You can download this presentation on the eLearningKorea 2019 website, so don't worry about taking pictures. I know it looks really great. There are 16 competencies. I'm not going to go through them again, but it was really invaluable. We went through 2 or 3 rounds of expert consultations. We also worked very closely with Professor Chung and Ewha University, Women's University, to come up with this. So this is a framework for governments to follow, to think about, to adapt. It's not prescriptive. This is the one and only understanding of digital citizenship. But it is anchored in Asia-Pacific region. So what I want to point out is we have these 5 words in the middle here that refer to this foundational prerequisite of equitable quality access to ICT. It's not so much talked about in the global north, in developed countries, but it's very, very relevant, I think, in the Asia-Pacific region. And it's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about any sort of digital citizenship activities. So this is our framework. And just who developed DCAP, we have great partners. Obviously could not have been done without the Korean Ministry of Education's support for UNESCO. UNICEF, as you all well know, Touch Cyber Wellness, Anita, and as well as SEAMEO INNOTECH, International Telecommunications Union, Google also was a very strong supporter of our work. So what we developed were 2 key things, okay? The framework, and then research tools that were matched or developed from the framework to support governments with measuring digital citizenship competencies. And we do recognize that you can't just measure it with a number, but it gives you a starting point to ask more questions and to research on specific issues. So that was the goal. And we had the benefit of 4 countries who joined us, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Fiji, and Republic of Korea. So why these 4 countries? They represented very diverse levels of ICT development and also population demographics. You can see these red lines. They're basically Korea's on the left, Fiji and Vietnam are in the middle, and Bangladesh is on the right. They have different populations, very sort of different contexts that we tried to benefit from in this multi-country research. Okay, so overall findings, again, Jian very kindly already covered some of the key findings. So this is like a very easy to read graph, right? And what is the trend here? Can anyone point out what's the trend that you see? If you can see the lines. So just to save time, digital safety and resilience was the biggest issue. Not the biggest issue, sorry. It scored the highest amongst the 5,000 respondents from the 4 countries, generally speaking, in each country. And the lowest was in digital creativity and innovation. So I can't say we were surprised by the highest in digital safety, because this matches our previous research. But I think we were quite shocked by the lowest scores in digital creativity and innovation across all 4 countries. And bearing in mind what Lelia mentioned, she also wanted to point out that particular questions had very, very low responses, such as the civic engagement questions. Civic engagement competency, that was questions. So there's more than just sort of this graph, but I just wanted to point out something interesting that we felt merited further investigation. And it does tie in very closely with a lot of the issues about creativity, expression, self-directed learning, supporting children with learning through projects that are of their own interest, which, presumably would foster this, but even maybe help in them understanding and dealing better with this. So it's not like A or B. It could be A and B and C together. Also, girls perform better than boys generally across all 5 domains. That is great news, but it also asks the question, why are women and girls not, we're not seeing that sort of translate into the STEM fields, into engineering, into the IT, sector. That's a big concern, I think. It just shows that maybe, there has to be more proactive policy making and interventions to support women and girls in this area. There's also an expected finding that kids in urban areas perform better than the kids in rural areas across all 5 domains. Yeah, and the digital divide persists, okay? I think what's super interesting is that, even in Korea, there are like about 7% of children, or 6%, who have not used digital devices, have not used digital devices for either never or less than a year at 15 years old. I mean, that is a divide that's a gap or a significant proportion of the population. In Bangladesh, the children who have never used it was about 10%. Fiji, 8%, yeah. And then, of course, you see Vietnam and Korea, extensive use, more than 5 years, more than 3 years. Yeah, and as Jian already mentioned, access at home and schools, is associated with higher performance. Correlation, not causation. So what I mean is, it doesn't explain, this is not the, explain that this is the particular cause, but there is a relationship that we have identified from the data. Screen time, I think I'll go over that because I think people are quite familiar with those issues. I think, yeah, we pointed this out as well during the panel discussion. I honestly didn't expect this, but yeah, so children learn by themselves, the vast majority, other than Bangladesh. Bangladesh is here, this blue column on the left, 46.3%. So different countries and different contexts may need a very specific different interventions. You can't just sort of apply one wholesale rule. Okay, so I'm very sorry. I'm going to skip through a lot of this presentation. You can find it online, but for the sake of time, I think we have a lot of insights and recommendations, but maybe these three are the biggest ones that we found out, okay? So the digital is holistic, you know, it's not just one answer, it's not just the child, it also involves the parents, teachers, your peers. And finally, you know, we don't really know a lot about what's happening. And it's one thing because, you know, the changes are happening so quickly. Smartphones are going, maybe the keynote speaker, Nicholas, was it? He mentioned, you know, it's going to be embedded neural learning. You don't have to key into Google. So maybe in 5 years' time, you know, all of this is irrelevant. So we don't really know a lot. But I think one thing that we are starting to advocate and say more is maybe start asking the children more. Start getting their responses, start trying to start from them as a starting point, and then bring in different stakeholders, including teachers and peers, into the conversation. Maybe we'll all be, you know, we'll all be digital kids sometime in the future. But anyway, so I have to end the presentation here. It's 12:30. I'm very sorry for skipping through so much of the presentation, but please feel free to speak with me if you have any questions. And have a good lunch. Thank you very much.